I know it's going to get late, but I do want to touch on two more very important issues. Um, Micromobility. So, um, in honor of Megan Andrews, who really unfortunately had to lose her life in order for us to finally figure out that something was dramatically wrong. Um, I don't know what Key Biscayne's going to do, but here's what I have done to try to give them some flexibility. And I will tell you this, that on the way in tonight, it was 5 o'clock when I was driving into and I see these two young kids, and they're on electric bikes. They're not on the key. They're just as I'm arriving at the key, and I thought, wonder how you got out here. Because you weren't allowed to have that on the Key Biscayne street. So did you walk it to Crandon? Did someone put it on a golf cart? This is what's going on in my head, and I'm just arriving here, right? And I thought, did you put it on a golf cart? Did someone drive you to Crandon and then you got on here? Then I said, well, how are you getting back, right? Because you're going to have to come back onto the island. And somehow, I don't think, unless you live on Crandon, you're going to get that bike back somewhere else because you're going to have to walk it or have someone pick it up for you, right? So naturally, I thought about it and I thought, there it is, those two. And they were flying. They were flying. I mean, I was just like, wow. They came right past me. And I was only probably going 25 miles an hour as I was coming, into the island. So here's what the law does. It sets a minimum age requirement for operating any electric bike, motorized scooter, and any other micromobility device. So remember that I'm having to legislate for an entire state, not just Key Biscayne, right? So we had a lot of discussion around this particular minimum age requirement because in the Panhandle, for instance, where there's very few people, kids use it to get to school, elderly people use it to go to the grocery store. So they're not interested in what's going on here. So we had to make it a little more broad to give you all the flexibility to make a decision that works for you. Key Biscayne. So that's one. You're now allowed to set a minimum requirement, which you were not allowed to do prior to that law passing. We have now required operators to carry a government issued photo ID while operating these devices. So if you move to reinstate them in any way here for an 18-year-old or a 21-year-old, I don't care how you do it, that person has to have a government issued ID. Now, what does that mean to you all? See if you can catch where we were going with this. A driver's license, a Florida ID, right? So those people are going to have to carry it because if a cop stops you and you're on it, they're going to ask you for it, right? And then we're going to know how old you are, aren't we? Well, yeah. I mean, any government ID, any government issued ID will work, but that's because how would we know how old you are? We need to know, and the only way we would know is by the government issued ID. And lastly, they have to provide training programs on safe operation and compliance with Florida traffic laws applicable to these devices. So that's like me getting a driver's license for the first time. I have to know the law. I have to be able to pass a test of sorts. So they got to train them. We didn't say they had to pass a test, but hopefully by training these people, whoever's operating them, they will know the laws of the road.
How will they know if you don't have to pass a test? How will they know?
Well, they have to take a training course. So they're going to get a training certificate, I imagine. I mean, let's assume for a minute now the village council decides, okay, we're going to go because I understand, Michael, right, that what's been proposed is 18. Let's say that 18 passes, right? Every 18-year-old who wants to ride one of these has to take a training course. I imagine that after completion of the training course, you would have a certificate that you could show anybody and say, no, no, I did. I took the training course. Then, see, I feel like it's funny. So many, this took me 3 years for these three little lines, literally, because I'm invested in this community, right? I understood before Megan died, we had a problem. Then Megan died, and then it really made me upset, right? Because needlessly, someone lost their life. And quite frankly, the young man, the 12-year-old that hit her, I feel badly for him as well. This tragedy could have been avoided. But having said that, it took 3 years to get three lines. Why? Because when you try to pass more government, remember that we in Miami-Dade live in a very dense community, lots and lots and lots of people. If you're from Holmes County, which you probably don't even know where it is, right? It's in the Panhandle. It has about approximately 14,000 people living in the whole county. Um, Quite a couple stoplights. Most people live on very large properties. They probably would like a world of less government. They see all of this and they think that's a lot of government. I don't need this. So that's why when we're trying to regulate things in South Florida versus something else, you can't pass a law that just says, although I'm getting really smart about this now, I know how to do it by population. And I'll tell you a little bit about a bill I had. But you can start to narrow the focus of laws based on counties with the size of this, which helps, right? Because then you get your colleagues whose counties are tiny to say, we don't care, it doesn't affect us. So you have a little bit, you learn to manipulate the system in a way that helps to regulate things we need regulated here. So that's now where you are. Your village council now has authority, and they can go further than this if they want. They could determine that they want to put you have to show a training certificate. Maybe you have to register the bike. You know what I mean? Like there's a number of things that you all can do, but now you're in the driver's seat because now you have the authority. The other bill that I wanted to talk about real quick um, is an important one to me as well, and that is called Lucy's Law. Let me just grab. You may remember Lucy Fernandez lost her life 2.5 years ago. Let's go back to that fateful day. A boat operator took out 12 girls to celebrate his daughter's 18th birthday. And what occurred there? They were all at Ocean Reef. They all started boating that day and drinking. Now, I'm a parent. I would never have allowed anyone to drink in my presence that was underage because I understand the liability, whether it be in my home or whether it be in my car or whether it be on a boat. This gentleman decided to do so. So all these girls are underage, are all drinking, 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 and so is not the operator. Although he says he was not. He said he had 2 beers. Correct. That's his testimony. He had 2 beers. Well, imagine that you tell a police officer, right now I go out and I get stopped and I tell a police officer, I've had 2 beers. What do you think's going to happen to me? What do you think's going to happen? Do you think that that's justifiable cause to get me out of the car and potentially do a sobriety test? Do you know that I was chuckling the other day when I was still in Tallahassee and I was leaving the Capitol and I made a turn and I got nervous because I didn't realize it was a one-way street and I tried to like correct it and I was stopped by an officer who said, "Ma'am, you okay?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am. I got very confused. I'm not from Tallahassee. I don't know why I went down this road." And he goes, "Step out of the car for a second." Because that looks like a confused person. I'm admitting to being confused. I've made a wrong turn. And I stepped out and we talked, and he said, I understand that you may have been confused. So he said, just slow down, turn around here. So there was not even, I don't think there was justifiable cause to ask me to step out of the car, but he was concerned because I had made a wrong turn and then tried to correct it. So it looked erratic. I can see where he was probably thinking, there's something wrong with this woman. So this guy tells these characters. Now, mind you, everybody is thrown out of the boat. And by the time the Fish and Wildlife comes, because you know those are the officers that we call, along with Marine Patrol when they're close, but they were out towards the waters, he had hit one of the channel markers, right? It sent everybody out. Now, apparently, and I won't go any further to tell you who I think is to blame or not to blame. Here's what I know. The court of law will determine who was responsible and what the punishment should be. But in the next morning, Lucy Fernandez died of her injuries, and Kathy Puig, who was a stellar scholar athlete, is now confined to a wheelchair and is trying to learn to talk again and to walk, and she may never walk again. So this really was very disturbing to me because 2 years, 2.5 years, that happens. And then last Mother's Day, 2 days before Mother's Day, Ella Adler was hit by a boat and her head was nearly decapitated. And instead of her mother planning a Mother's Day dinner, she was planning a funeral for a 13-year-old. So at some juncture, you have to ask yourself, what's happening out in the waters? And if you are a boater and you have gone out on boats and you familiarize yourself with the water, you recognize that what we have is total chaos in the water now. And the rules that apply on the road were not applicable on the water. So I don't understand that. And listen, for all of us that grew up in Florida, I always like to say the first thing that got into the boat before we did was the cooler. And it was full of alcohol. Let's be honest. And then the speakers. So we're all distracted and we're drinking as teenagers, right? That's got to end. And I'll tell you why it has to end. It wasn't the fact that Lucy lost her life and that Gabby's confined in a wheelchair and that Ella was nearly decapitated. What has happened is that we have more boats, more, not just boats, we have people on all kinds of different types of boating vehicles. They're all crisscrossing in front of each other. The boats are bigger, the boats are faster. And in addition to that, I now have people that have come from New York that think they know what to do. They rent a boat. They don't have any idea. They think they do because they're just looking around. Let me see, I'll follow that guy. So, Lucy's Law was born of Lucy's death. And what it does, if you leave the scene of a boating accident or reckless operation of a vessel, so you know that the person who hit Ella did not even know. He says he did not know he hit her and he left the scene. And so we didn't, it took several days to find out who it was that had killed Ella. So if you do either one of those, you'll be a first-degree felony if the accident results in a fatality. It'll be a second-degree felony if the accident caused serious bodily injury. It'll be a third-degree felony if the accident caused non-serious injuries. And it'll be a second-degree misdemeanor if you damaged any property. Okay, so now we're talking that there's big, big consequences. All of those carry prison term. It also provides a mandatory minimum sentence of 4 years for fleeing the scene of a boating accident that resulted in a fatality. So in the case of Ella, had this law been in place, the gentleman who hit her would be serving 4 years, mandatory. It also increases the penalties for reckless operation of a vessel that results in any accidents or injuries. So it's a second-degree misdemeanor if the reckless vessel operation does not result in an accident. It's a first-degree misdemeanor if it results in an accident that causes damage to the property or a person. And then it's a third-degree felony if the vessel results in an accident that caused serious bodily injury. It also makes it a second-degree misdemeanor to knowingly provide false information in required boating accident reports. Because people are lying because they're afraid instead of telling the truth. It also expands the definition of vessel homicide to include certain incidents where there's a death of an unborn child. So if I'm 8 months pregnant and I'm on a boat and you cause me to lose that child, that is a vessel homicide now because I was expecting to give birth to that child. So we're talking about getting very serious. These are the same, almost the same penalties if you did this on the road. We're now saying we're going to make it similar so that if you're boating under the influence, and that's the other one, it adds death of an unborn child if you are boating under the influence. Because right now, boating under the influence manslaughter did not include an unborn child. But if it results in the death of an unborn child, and it provides that that person who's convicted of BUI, manslaughter, has to serve a mandatory sentence of 4 years. So because of Lucy and her family who advocated for this and who had to tell their story over and over and over again, it was heartbreaking to me, like it was when I heard the stories of Megan, right? You can't believe that this has happened to somebody. But because of Megan's death, and I spoke to her husband and her children, she was very much present with me during the period of time that we were moving this language. And I said to the Andrews family, Do you know she was a great person in life and she continued in death? Because of her, we will save many, many, many more lives that would needlessly have been lost. So the same goes for Lucy. And I think, as you know, that for me, this is such an important, um, I pass a lot of bills, and look, the condo bill is important, housing bills are important. When it impacts real people and real loss has been experienced, I find that those are the most important bills that I will ever sponsor. So those were the ones that I really wanted to talk about, Miss Betty. I hope it's been informative. So much happened in Tallahassee, I can tell you that, but we're back and we're getting ready for another session. We go back in October because remember on odd years we go in early. So we'll start committee weeks in October and we will start session in January and in March because elections begin in 2026. So there's plenty of work to be done. We're here to serve. If there's anything that you need, please don't hesitate to call Ala and myself. And yes.
Going over the whole thing and sitting on the bench and analyzing what the action happened, the whole thing, But the question that continuously goes into my mind that we do need to have and pay a lot of attention is where are the parents?
Such a good point. Where are the parents
Where
of
are the
these
parents?
kids?
And what I suggest is, we're going to ask the kids to take the licenses, we're going to ask them to teach us and that, but I think that all those tests and all those things should be taken by the parent and the kid.
Frank, let me tell you, if the council moves to do anything, and I don't know, they'll decide, but if the council moves to do anything, if they start at an adult at 18, then, hopefully they'll all be adults and have a little bit more. But look, you and I know this, and we've talked, the frontal lobe is not developed until they're 25. I don't even, I tell you that I shudder when I see a 15-year-old driving a car. Their judgment is impaired. It is. They're distracted. They don't know how to judge things the way we as adults do. And I hear what you say, Frank, and we've talked about this, right? But I also understand. Guess what my colleagues in the Panhandle would tell you about 18. If they can go fight for us, they can own a gun. These people have a different impression. And I always say, you got to come from Brickell or you got to come from Key Biscayne. You got to come from where we live on top of each other to understand why it's important to us that we be a little more careful.
This is an individual situation that we have in here, and I will do whatever I need to do to make sure that we discuss this. The parents, if you're going to send a 12-year-old kid, I've been analyzing the way the accident happened as an engineer. I mean, the impact on Megan's bicycle, the bicycle was dragged 5 feet after that.
I know.
So, but the thing is that if you bring the responsibility of the kid to the parents, in other words, you're going to give them a license, and both of you are going to have to do a license, and both of you are going to be responsible if there's an accident. Don't leave it just with 12-year-old kid.
I agree. I understand. Frank, thank you for being with us tonight. I hope that it's been meaningful for you to know just how much she was with us.
I know that.
I know.
She's still with me.
No, she definitely is. I told your children that. She's all around us.
I will fight with you next to you. I will fight with you, Melina. I thought
Frank.
the right term is all over the world and I win. So,
Love you, Frank.
so we have to protect everybody. We have to protect the kids. We have to protect, and the question that I always ask is where were the parents?
Yeah.
So we have to bring the parents down to the level.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. There's some other questions here. I think she was first, and then first was. Oh, I'm sorry.
Property tax has been
But
our property tax has been addressed.
So that is a great question. You're looking at the co-chair of the House Select Committee on Property Taxes. My job with my other co-chair, Representative Toby Obrador from Brevard County. We have 35 members, and then the two of us makes 37. There's 37 of us on this committee, and we're supposed to be studying all these kinds of different alternatives. I was here on the Key, I guess it was, I don't know, in May, when I first came back, because there were two things that I was interested in, making sure that Raina and David kept the contract on Bill Baggs. That was super important to me. which they did. They won a hard-fought battle, but they remain, as you know, as I said, I want my constituents to run that. I don't want a company from Virginia. So that was a really big thing. But then I came to talk about property taxes. Part of my job and part of the job of everybody on the committee is to go and meet with their city and county officials to find out how much property taxes do you incur? What are you spending it on, right? So if we eliminated them completely, what would happen? You should know that I believe it's 72% of your revenue in Key Biscayne is property taxes, of which 50% is spent on police, right? Public safety. Okay? So if I got rid of them, what would happen? A couple things might happen. You might not be a city anymore or a village because you wouldn't have sufficient revenue to run the municipality. And therefore, the very reason that you incorporated was so you would have control over your own destiny, right? Like, I understand that in the early days, you did this because the county wasn't paying attention, right? So you said, well, that's it. And I know that Gene Stearns and I have had a really long conversation on this because he said that's the very reason we incorporated. You cannot tie our hands here and make us go back into the county. So then the question is, what will the voters want, right? The voters are going to tell us all, get rid of them. But then what kind of quality of life will you have, right? No parks. Let me tell you, the county, their second highest expenditure is parks. First it's public safety, then it's parks, right? So I guess what we're trying to do is not impoverish. And then I didn't tell you that we have 20 of the 67 counties, 29 of them are what's known as fiscally constrained, where the state has to help them because they don't have any tax base. So they wouldn't have police, they wouldn't have fire. We have to step in and give them money. So money in the coffers is going to 29 counties that are super, super poor. If we take away any property taxes, I don't know what happens to them, right? So we have to find a way where one size doesn't fit all, right? Because what goes on in Holmes or Liberty County is not what's going on in Miami-Dade County. But we also want to give people relief from these high property taxes. So the answer to your question is we are studying now what are good proposals to put on the ballot in 2026. And that is where we're at. And let me tell you something, this is the hardest work I've ever done, is to lead this work because it's complex. It's not easy. There are no easy answers. And we want to I want to do the right thing. I have to hold public safety harmless. We cannot have anarchy and we have to have law and order. I mean, I think at the very least, we all agree that that is important to all of us. But after that, the question then remains, what's next on the chopping block? So that's where we're at. And it's, well, we could increase sales tax. We could do a lot of things. We could put there's been so many recommendations from the 37 members of my committee. There's been do a VAT tax. For those of you that travel to Europe, you know the VAT tax. We would be taxing tourists, but you got to be careful that you don't increase it so much that they don't come, right? Because remember, we live off of tourism as well. So maybe they don't care about another additional $15 on their hotel, but if I put $1,500 on that hotel room, no one is coming. So you have to, again, see the balance. It's a balancing act. We'll get somewhere, I promise you. We'll get somewhere. Hopefully, it'll be a start. I don't think we finish here. Listen, I met with our property appraiser, and he's thinking of increasing. Listen, for our elderly retired people, this is a huge burden, huge burden. So we have to figure out ways in which we help them too, with maybe more exemption, maybe higher values, right? Because remember that the long-term senior exemption, the property has to be less than $25,000. Listen, nobody's living in a house that's less than $25,000. So maybe we have to up that to give more relief to our long-term seniors. So this is a no rest for the weary. Just when I thought I could come home and relax, I have that hanging over my head. I think they say that if you work hard, they'll give you more work. Thank you.
So, Vicki, going back to just property taxes,
Sure.
I think we need total tax reform. I do, because of, we're a state that doesn't have income tax. We used to have an intangible tax, and we have tax exemptions for a whole slew of things like ostrich feed. There's no sales tax on ostrich feed in the state of Florida for some reason. Why, I don't know.
Have no idea where that came from, but it sounds like one of those. Yeah,
But, and for example, last legislative session in the budget was that the governor was helping families, so there's no sales tax on diapers.
that's true.
And so, but I don't have young children, and I don't have adult diaper use yet either. So am I, but it's and if that's, and I understand that, believe me, I understand. But there's a whole part of the population that's not benefiting how the state is helping families. And
The same can be said for the fact that neither you nor I have children in school, and yet we're paying property taxes for schools.
I mean, but I'm of the belief that having an educated base helps everybody.
Well, it certainly does.
And
But I don't know that we're going to get to complete tax reform.
I understand.
That's a difficult, that's a huge undertaking, right? I think property taxes is one, because everyone's value has increased in their properties. Let me tell you what some elderly people have told me, retirees, that they are living in their own prison because they can't leave the big house, because to go to a smaller place would increase their costs. And yet they don't want to live in the big house that they raise their kids in. So I get that there's that. Truly, there's so many issues around. And let me tell you something. There are also members of the Florida House who fundamentally believe that you should not be taxed on your property that you own outright. That it's a tax, it's like a government taxing you on a property you already own. So you got to remember that when we're talking, not everybody thinks the way we do. And no one thinks the same. So trying to find and negotiate what may work is, I'm waiting to see that, because we must have a bill. We've been charged by the Speaker of the House, we must have a bill by January that hits the floor, and that then will be put on the ballot in November of 2026.
And the issue there is then how does the county provide, or the village provide police, the service.
Of course, that's exactly what makes this so hard, right? Because any movement, you only got so much wiggle room over here, only so much wiggle room. So that wiggle room is something that kind of haunts me, because I have this village and I have the city of Miami, and they have the same problem. The wiggle room is tight, it's very tight. Hold on, Luisa. Let's get you behind you. Will you give it to Luisa, please? Thank you.
So with the new legislative session coming up, I was wondering if we could ask something of you. I'm sure you've heard about the Rickenbacker Causeway.
I have.
Okay.
I have. I hear that you gave. I saw Commissioner Regalado, and I understand that the village gave her I guess she had requested $1 million. So I know she's moving forward on her plan.
Yeah, so there's like 7,000 taxpayers on this island.
Only?
I think about 7,200, 7,500. We're not a lot. And one of the problems is that we do use that causeway. We share that with the county. And as you know, a lot of the beachgoers and a lot of Miamians come here. I was wondering for our sake, for the sake of this island, would it be possible to, because I know the Venetian Causeway, FDOT was able to give some money to them to get their bridges done. I'm asking if you can help us out. Because we have a council, no offense, but they like to give money away. And a lot of our people are on fixed income on this island.
Understood.
And it's really becoming to the point, we have a stormwater project that could cost us a fortune.
100 million.
That's coming from us as taxpayers, but the causeway does matter for us. It does. And I understand the situation that the council is trying to help, come up with a plan or a solution. The bottom line is, we as a community, we're a small community, we don't have the financial means. So I'm asking, since other people have gotten grants, federal grants and state grants. I'm asking, because you've done a lot to help us. Is there something that you can help us to get funding to help on Bearcut Bridge, to help us come up with the plan? I don't know about this awkward viaduct thing that they want to do, but something to help Key Biscayne. And
So
I'm gonna answer that question. So I know FDOT is somewhere in the middle of all this, because remember, you have four parties. You have FDOT, you have the city, you have the county, and you have the village, right? And the state for the billbacks, right? If you remember, I don't know where FDOT is on this plan, because I have not reviewed the plan, nor do I know who's funding what. You know, the way FDOT does things is they do 5-year plans. I just don't know if we're included in that 5-year plan. We can certainly find out what's happening. But I think while I was in session, I know that Commissioner Regalado did a presentation here. Did any of you attend that one? Did you know whether they said if FDOT was going to be providing funding? I mean, I don't know. So no funding from FDOT. It might be because they don't have jurisdiction. So, FDOT seeded all of it. Remember back last year in July, we did
a
jurisdiction on the Venetian.
they did.
But let me tell you something, they don't have jurisdiction on Brickell Key, for instance. So you know that I tried to get them $2 million to fix the bridge, because here's the dilemma. The $4.8 million that it's going to cost to restore that bridge is imperative. Why, you ask? Because remember where the Mandarin was on Brickell Key? It is demolished and a new luxury condo is going there, except the bridge can't hold the number of trucks, construction trucks. But the governor vetoed that, just as he vetoed the 2 appropriations I got for the village. So, I don't know about I can't make a promise. I can promise to check to see what's FDOT doing, what is their involvement in this project, because we certainly, I mean, look, beer hold on for a second.
So you're the source.
Well, I'm not really the source, but I can tell you a little more about it. That the plan that Commissioner Regalado is putting forward serves all the stakeholders. It's a very bold plan, but it's very, very, very expensive. In my opinion, my personal opinion, it's a billion with a B dollar project, and it's something that will take 10 to 15 years to do. And in my opinion, this is not something that is going to come from FDOT money. This is going to come from the feds.
That's what I think.
It's going to come. The only thing similar to this that I have seen was a big dig in Boston, and we know what happened there. I was there before, during the construction, and after. Okay, so this is not something that, yes, we can give $950,000 for the planning, but the ones that should be doing the planning, and like you said, figuring out who is going to contribute what is the fair share of the village of Key Biscayne, is a county, Miami-Dade County, which are the owners of the causeway. And once they put the plan together, then we should all contribute to it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't even know what the plan is, but once the plan has been established, I agree that the feds will probably have to step in. I can tell you one thing: if the Bearcut Bridge is in the shape it's in, that we hear, it'll only take one hurricane, and then we're going to build a new bridge really fast, just like we did at Sanibel, because people have to get off the island, right, on and off. So I think you're right. I think we wait. I'm grateful that you have agreed to fund the plan, so we know what the plan is, because I still don't know what the plan will look like until we see the plan. Then we'll know who's responsible for what. Because let me tell you something. I hear so many things about Bearcut, like that it is just ready to be. If the winds come, it'll be gone. So they say. Again, I'm not an engineer. I don't know anything about it. But that's what they've said.
I am an engineer.
I knew you were.
And
a resident engineer.
Yeah, right. I used to be the executive director of Miami-Dade Expressway Authority many years ago. I retired in 2007, so a long time ago. Bearcut Bridge is basically, you have three bridges. With the one in 1994, which is the center part, then you have the part that looks to the ocean, that is 83, I think, it's something like that. And then you have something that was done 10 years ago, that was the part that looks to the bay. And you know what they tell me, the county tells me, is that the surge coming from the ocean or coming from the bay is going to be hauled by the two pieces that they have put in there, and they will never get to the center part. But the center part is a 1944 girders. You know, I have seen how they look.
Well, and I will say this: I don't know that we can predict weather anymore, because you saw what happened in Texas, and the measurement quit measuring when it got to 29.6 feet. That was just a river. I shudder at the thought of that we don't really remember just how powerful Mother Nature can be. I mean, and it swept away houses, it swept away people, it swept away everything. So we don't really know what can happen. I love when they tell me this is not possible. And I say, now I am living in the land of all things are possible. We don't know. Weather is turning. I'm more worried, to be honest with you, I'm more worried about how quickly storms are getting from category 1 to category 5 when I have to evacuate this island. Like, if you remember that these storms can accelerate now within 24 hours. How quickly can I get 15,000 people off this island? So I'm worried about a lot of things, right? Because weather is becoming very unpredictable. And I don't know what it will do to our infrastructure. And we probably won't know until it happens. I hope that you're all praying like I am that we don't get hit with a storm, because we've been lulled into very comfortable places. For 7 years, we haven't been hit while the West Coast is being battered. So you better pray that we don't have to find out what happens to the Bearcut Bridge.
Amen.
I swear. I mean, I'm really worried, because this is if you can see the destruction that is hit on the West Coast, you would be shocked. It's a shock to the system to see how someone loses their entire home. And God knows what will happen here. So let us pray that we don't have to find out, and let us just move forward with the plan and see. You can always stop it. You don't listen, you can always say, I don't want to, I'm not going to participate. But I believe I think the people should at least be given the right information so you can make a very informed choice. That's the way I like to do things. I'm informed. So, Miss Betty, I know I've been way over my time, and I apologize greatly. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.